So this chapter 2 of the prophet Isaiah, is a wonderful example of the both-andedness of the prophetic witness. That is, it's the prophetic witness is not either or; it's both and. And sometimes it can be jarring to modern readers because we tend to want to see, a single line of thought developed over time, and then a smooth transition to another line of thinking that might condition that which came before. But that's not the word of the Lord that came to the prophets. It is fire. It is like it's more like lightning, and it can jump from verse to verse between a consolation and a promise to a judgment and a condemnation back again. And it's because it's all coming from the same God and it's coming through a human person. And we cannot hold the simultaneity of God's justice and his mercy, of God's righteousness and his forgiveness. We can't hold it, in a simultaneous instant. We have, for us, we have to say one and say the other. And so the prophets, in these words that they receive, the prophets put them as close together as they can, right? And so again, it kind of can give the modern reader, whiplash. But here's the both and message in today's lesson from Isaiah. Number one, the peoples of the earth will stream to Zion. That is, the God gives a promise to the prophet Isaiah that this tiny kind of besieged kingdom in the middle of the Judean hill country, caught between two superpowers, the Assyrians and the Egyptians, that this tiny little people with their flocks of sheep and their vineyards that they are so proud of and love so much, that this little people is going to be the center of the earth. In fact, they are the center of the earth, and that peoples that from these superpowers and peoples they don't even know the existence of yet, beyond that wild frontier, the legends that they've heard of, those peoples will come to Jerusalem. And then, but here's the cat. And so then, you might think, oh, the Israelites are like, oh, that's awesome. God is on our side. He's going to make us in charge. He's going to, they're going to acknowledge our cultural superiority and learn how to be Israelites like us. But that's not the word of the Lord. The word of the Lord is, yes, they will come to you, but they're coming to you to learn about me. Read the lesson carefully. They're not coming to you to learn how to be like you. They're coming to you to find out how to be in a relationship with me. That's your mission, Israel. That is what I've called you to do. That is what you are supposed to be doing, is flinging wide your gates to bring in the peoples of the world, to be in a relationship with me, your God. I am one God. And it's like God saying to the Israelites, you say I am one God, right? I mean, you say that. Now let's follow the logic. If I'm one God and I'm only one, and I'm your God, that means I'm also their God too. They don't even know it, but I'm their God too. And if you believe what you say you believe, Israel, then you have to acknowledge that I am also their God. And I've called them to be in a relationship with me. And you are to be the instrument of the beginning of that relationship. And by the way, when I come to start that relationship, I'm going to crush everything in you, Israel. I'm going to banish and clean out everything in you, Israel, that would be a barrier to them knowing me, knowing God. And that's a hard judgment. And God is telling Israel, and by the way, you've got lots of that kind of stuff that I'm going to have to get rid of for you to do what I'm asking you to do, to bring the peoples of the world to me. So that's the word, that's both the comforting and the challenging word of the prophet, and it comes to the church. We as the church are called to receive this word too. Yes, God in the power of the Holy Spirit has promised that he will bring the peoples of the world to his church. But he's not bringing them to his church in order for them to learn to be like us, but rather for them to learn to be like him, to be like Jesus. And he calls us to be the instruments of that transformation. And God has promised us also that his Holy Spirit will burn like chaff everything in us, individually and corporately, that prevents us from being a part of that mission. And And so we have to, that's what Advent is about, is Advent is a willingness to allow God to clean house in us. May it be so. A reading from the prophet Isaiah. The word that Isaiah son of Amoz saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. In days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be raised above the hills. All the nations shall stream to it. Many people shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations, and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. For you have forsaken the ways of your people, O house of Jacob. Indeed, they are full of diviners from the east, and of soothsayers like the Philistines, and they clasp their hands with foreigners. Their land is filled with silver and gold, and there is no end to their treasures. Their land is filled with horses, and there is no end to their chariots. Their land is filled with idols. They bow down to the work of their hands, to what their own fingers have made. And so people are humbled, and everyone is brought low. Do not forgive them. Enter into the rock and hide in the dust from the terror of the Lord and from the glory of his majesty. The haughty eyes of people shall be brought low, and the pride of everyone shall be humbled, and the Lord alone will be exalted in that day. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.